want you to write these things down. These are three things that Paul teaches us about fighting the battles that you fight: the battle against discouragement, the battle against depression, the battle against doubt, the battle against despair, the battle against darkness in your life, against delays and dead ends and difficulties. Now, the first thing in Ephesians chapter 6 that we're going to learn is this. Write this down. I must get dressed for the battle. I must get dressed for the battle. Nobody would go out onto a battlefield naked. Nobody would go play NFL football without putting on some padding, suiting up, putting on a helmet, these kind of things. You just don't go out into a fight without being prepared for it. Now, here's what the Bible says in Ephesians 6, verse 10. A final word, Paul says, be strong with the Lord's mighty power. Put on all of God's armor. Circle that phrase, God's armor. Put on all of God's armor, so you'll be able to stand firm against all the strategies and tricks of the devil. Now, there is an unseen war going on between good and evil, between light and darkness, between God and Satan. They are not equal enemies. Satan is far inferior. He's a created being. God's a zillion times more powerful than Satan. And one day he's going to wipe him out. But he allows him to exist right now so people have a choice, because it's not real love unless you can choose to not love somebody. And so God gives us a choice between good and evil. He's actually using that right now. But in this cosmic battle between God and Satan, people are often pawns. You see, Satan cannot hurt God. He can't hurt him at all. So what do you do when you can't hurt somebody? You hurt his children. You go after his kids. You want to hurt me? You hurt my kids. You hurt my grandkids. And so the bottom line here is that Satan often uses you as a pawn to get at God. He tries to hurt you. Now notice what this verse says. Put on all of God's armor so that you will be able to stand firm against all the strategies and tricks of the devil. Now the devil is real. He's real, he's actual, he's factual, he's not just a force. You know, we like to joke about Satan. We think of him in a little red pajamas with a tail and horns and a pitchfork. In fact, we name our teams, the Diablos. And we like to joke, but Satan is no laughing matter. He hates you. He wants to destroy you. He wants to destroy your marriage. He wants to destroy your career. He wants to destroy your finances. He wants to destroy your life. He would be happy for you to take your own life. Satan wants to mess up your life. And notice it says he has strategies and tricks. Satan is subtle. Satan is strategic. Satan is smart. He's far smarter than you are. So don't try to outsmart Satan. You're never going to outsmart him, and he's not afraid of you at all. Now, that's the bad news, that you were born for a battle. The good news is you were born to win. And the Bible says in 1 John, greater is he who is in you than he that is in the world. Satan is not afraid of you, but he is afraid of who's in you, God. And greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. And when God's Spirit, the Spirit of Jesus Christ is in you, you don't have to be afraid of Satan, but you got to get dressed for battle. Now, the second thing we're going to learn from this passage is this: I must know my real enemy. I must know my real enemy. One of the reasons why you walk around defeated and discouraged all the time is because you don't know who your real enemy is. You often think your enemy is other people. That's not the real enemy. You often think the enemy is the economy, or the enemy is a political party, or the enemy is something else. Who is the real enemy? If I ask you that, who's responsible for all the mess in the world? Who's responsible for the mess in our culture, the mess in our economy? Who's responsible for all this mess? Some of you would say, the Democrats. Some of you would say, the Republicans. Some of you would say, the Tea Party. Some of you would say, a pox on all of them, and you'd all be wrong. Some of you would say, who's responsible for all the problems in our society? Militant Muslims. Some would say the gay agenda. Some would say atheist. Some people say the problem is right-wing politics. Some would say the problem is the media and the coarsening of our society. You would be wrong in every case. They are not. the real enemy. Look at what the Bible says. Verse 12, we are not fighting against people. And if you think other people are the enemy, you're wrong. We are not fighting against people made of flesh and blood, but against the evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against those mighty powers of darkness who rule this world, and against wicked spirits, many translations say spiritual wickedness, in the heavenly places. Now, you are no match for Satan. You trying to take on Satan is like you trying to shoot a rubber band at a battleship. It's going to have no effect at all. Satan is not afraid of you. He's not scared of you, and you cannot hurt him. But everybody gets used by Satan. Yes, Christians get used. You know, sometimes you say things that Satan put those thoughts in your mind. You say, even a believer? Absolutely. I have said things to my wife that I know, looking back, that was from the devil. And she knew it was from the devil too when I said it. And you have been used as a pawn in Satan's plan all along. You cannot beat Satan, but God can. Now, the other thing I want you to understand about this, and write this down, is not everything that is spiritual is good. Did you write that down? Not everything that is spiritual is good. There is spiritual wickedness. There are good spirits and there are bad spirits. There's spiritual light and there's spiritual darkness. There is righteousness and there is evil. Just because someone says, I'm spiritual, doesn't mean they're good, because there are evil spiritual forces too. Not everything that's spiritual is a good thing. And by the way, Satan doesn't fight fair. So a lot of times he's going to put ideas in your mind. You've got to catch him in the act. Go, well, hey, I know where that one come from. You see, Satan can't physically attack you. He can't come out and slug you and punch you. Everything he does in your life, he does by suggestion. And so this battle, this spiritual war that you're in, it's in your mind. It is a mental battle. And those thoughts of depression and those thoughts of discouragement and those thoughts of anger and fear and worry, those are coming from the evil one. And they're going to come at you, and you need to understand them and catch them in the act. Now, the third thing this passage is going to teach us, and we're going to look at it, is use every piece of armor. I must use every piece of armor. And we're going to spend today's session looking at the pieces of armor. In verse 13, it says, use every piece of God's armor to resist the enemy in the time of evil, and we are in evil times right now, so that after the battle, you will still be standing. God says, you can have victory, and I want you to fight from victory, not for victory. Stand in the place of victory, of what Jesus Christ did on the cross for you. But he said, you're going to have to put on every piece of God's armor. And Paul has been taken as a prisoner to appeal to Caesar, the emperor of Rome. He's the most famous prisoner in Rome right now. And so not only is he in prison, but he was chained 24 hours a day to a Roman centurion. And as Paul is writing this, he's writing it as he's chained to a Roman centurion. And Paul looks up and he's writing on how to handle spiritual warfare. And he looks up and he sees this fully dressed Roman centurion. He goes, I could use this as a teaching lesson. And I can compare every part of a Roman soldier's garb, weaponry, protection, and make a spiritual parallel to the things you need in your life to guard against depression, despair, defeat, doubt, difficulty, and all the things that get you down. And so we're going to look at that. And today, in just a minute, I'm going to have Tom Wilson come out. And come on out, Tom. How you doing? Now, underneath all of his weaponry, the first thing that a Roman centurion would wear would be a red tunic. And this was kind of like his long john. So he's standing here in his underwear actually right now. The first thing that a Roman centurion would put on would be the belt. Now, if you've ever watched like weightlifters, professional weightlifting at the Olympics, or even sometimes even wrestlers, they will wear a heavy belt like this. They cinch it up around their waist. It gives them support and stability. It's what holds them together. And so the first thing that a centurion would put on would be the belt. It was not only strengthening his core, the center of his being, but it also held the weapons that he was going to wear as he went out into battle. Now, Paul makes a parallel, and he says what you need to wear as a Christian is you need to wear a belt, and it is the belt of truth. Notice this verse there on your outline. In verse 14, so stand ready with the belt of truth tight around your waist. Now, the belt of truth gives your life stability. It gives your life strength. If your life isn't based on truth, then you're going to have sinking sands, shifting sands. You have no strong core. Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, the person who builds his house, who builds his life on my truth, is like a guy who builds his house on the rock. And when the hurricanes, like they're having back east, and the earthquakes, like they had back east this week, come, because you're built on the truth, you're like a house on the rock, you're gonna withstand it. But he said, if you don't build your house on truth, your life on truth, it's gonna be shifting sands, and it'll be easy to blow you over. Now, what does this represent? Well, you might write this down. The belt of truth represents integrity. Integrity. And integrity is knowing and doing the truth. And the first thing you need to put on in your life is integrity. It's the belt that holds everything together. If your life isn't based on truth, it's gonna fall apart. And so you need integrity, moral integrity, relational integrity, financial integrity, sexual integrity. You need integrity in the different areas of your life. Now, I've explained this to you before, but let me do it again. Integrity does not mean perfection. It doesn't mean you always do the right thing. Because if you had to be perfect at integrity, nobody's got integrity. Because nobody is perfect. Everybody slips, everybody stumbles. Integrity is not compartmentalizing your life so that you don't appear different ways with different people. Integrity comes from the word integer, which means a unit of one. It means your life is not a bunch of pieces of pie, but it's the filling all in the middle. In other words, that you act the same way with everybody. You don't act one way at work and another way at church. You don't act one way at home and another way with your friends. Integrity means what you see is what you get, that you're not faking it. The opposite of integrity is knowing the truth and not doing it. That's called hypocrisy, which is wearing a mask. So integrity is the opposite of hypocrisy, which means I'm exactly what I appear to be. Now, if you lack integrity in any area, you are going to be vulnerable. As I said, if you segment your life and say, this is my church life, and then this is my work life, this piece of the pie. And this piece of the pie is my sex life. And this is my secret pornography life over here. And this is my sports life. And this is my friendship social life. You're already lacking integrity because you're not acting the same in all of those areas. Integrity is knowing the truth, but more than just knowing it, it is doing the truth. And that's the one that gives you stability. It holds you together in the middle in the tough times. It gives you strength. Now, the second piece that a Roman centurion would put on is they would put on over the tunic some body armor. And they would have a breastplate, which would cover the heart. And then the other part of the body armor would cover the rest of their vital organs, the lungs and the liver and the kidneys and all of those things. And so no soldier is going to go out into battle without body armor on, without the breastplate and the body armor. Now the Bible, Paul says, what you need for your spiritual battle is what he calls the breastplate or the body armor of righteousness. And notice the next verse. He says, put on the belt of truth, and then he says, with the breastplate of righteousness protecting your chest. What's in your chest? Your heart. He's talking about your heart here. Now, what is righteousness? Righteousness is purity of heart. That's what it is. And so the second piece you have to put on in your life is purity. First, integrity, knowing and doing the truth. And second, you have to put on purity, which means keeping my motives clear, keeping my motives clean, having a pure heart. That's what righteousness is. And he says, when you put on the breastplate or the body armor of righteousness, you're saying, God, I want a pure heart. I want to have pure motives. Let me show you a couple verses. The Bible says in Psalm chapter 24, look at this. Who may ascend to the hill of the Lord? Who may stand in his holy place? What does that mean? Who can? It means who can get close to God. That's what it means. Who can get close to God? And here's the answer. He who has clean hands and a pure heart. Now that doesn't mean perfection because none of us are perfect. But a pure heart means that even when you do the wrong thing, you want to do the right thing. That's a pure heart. Even when I do the wrong thing, I regret it because I want to do the right thing. That's a pure heart. And Jesus said, blessed or blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Only the pure in heart get to be close to God. Now, if you want to be blessed, you want to be blessed in your family, you want to be blessed in your business, and you want to be blessed in your finances, you got to have a pure heart. God will not bless an impure heart. And so you need to put on not just the belt of truth, integrity, but you need to put on the breastplate of righteousness, which is purity, keeping my motives clear. Now, is your heart pure? You don't have to have a lot of talent in life to succeed, but if you want God's blessing, you do have to have pure motives. Now, Satan always wants to attack you with impurity. And the reason he wants to attack you with impurity is if he can get his foot in the door, you're a goner. And so he'll attack you with moral impurity, pornography, movies, books, songs. I mean, if I said, get a drink of water, go out here and drink out of the gutter, none of you would go out and drink out of the gutter. So why are you watching all those gutter shows on television? You see, mind pollution is far worse than physical pollution because your mind is all you've got. And when you allow anything to go in your mind, you are polluting it. You say, well, that's kind of stuff, I watch that stuff, it just doesn't bother me. That's the problem. That's the problem. If it doesn't bother me, it means your conscience has already been seared. You know, if your conscience was clear and pure, it would bother you. The fact that you can hear all that kind of language and it doesn't bother you means you don't have a pure heart. Now, if you don't have a pure heart, a brave heart, if you don't have like Braveheart had, a pure heart, you're a pushover for Satan. You don't have to be strong, but you do have to have integrity and purity. You have to have the belt of truth and the breastplate of righteousness. Now, another way Satan will try to get you to be impure is through greed. Because if he can get you greedy and wanting more, he'll get you to cheat on your taxes. He'll get you to accept a shady business deal, to shave the edges. He will try to get a door ajar in your life through success, through praise, through applause, so you don't depend on God anymore. You have to keep your heart pure. If you don't, you're going to lose the battle in life. But on the other hand, if you keep a pure heart, your motives pure, Satan fears the person with a pure heart. Not the perfect person, but the person with a pure heart who wants to do the right thing. And you don't have to be afraid of him. He then is afraid of you. Now, the third thing that a soldier would put on are the shoes. And a Roman soldier's shoes had hobnails, if you can see these, in the bottom. There were little nails that were nailed in there to make the grip better. It's kind of like cleats. Cleats on a football shoe or cleats on a golf shoe, because you needed these shoes with hobnails so you didn't go slip sliding away on the battle. You needed to be able to take a stand and hold your ground. You didn't want to stumble, you didn't want to slide, you didn't want to fall. No Roman centurion would go into a battle in Crocs, okay? Because you're going to go slip sliding away. So you would put on these shoes. And Paul says this represents peace in your life. He calls them the shoes of the good news of peace. Look at this next verse. He says, on your feet, wear the shoes of good news. In other words, the good news shoes. Somebody should start that brand. Good news shoes, prepared to share the gospel of peace. Now, as I said, a Roman soldier needed to have good footing so he could stand his ground, so he wouldn't slip. Now, for you to stand spiritually, so you don't slip, so you don't slide, so you don't stumble in the next 10 years and lose everything you've got, so you don't fall away, you're gonna need the shoes of good news, prepared to share the gospel of peace. Circle that phrase, the gospel of peace. Now, what is he saying? If you want to stand in life and stand up under the storms, you're going to have to be at peace. Now, he's talking here about relationships. There are three kinds of peace: peace with God, peace with myself, and peace with everybody else. It's called reconciliation. Peace with God, peace with myself, and peace with everybody else. Jesus called it the great commandment. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. Make peace with God, make peace with your neighbor, make peace with yourself. Be in harmony with God, be in harmony with your neighbor, be in harmony with yourself. He's saying, be reconciled to God, be reconciled to other people, and be reconciled to yourself. He said, if you got conflict in your life, you have just opened the door to satanic attack. He said, if you don't have peace in your heart, if your mind is not at peace and your heart is at peace, then you're gonna be wide open. You're a pushover for Satan when you're not at peace. When you're not at peace. Now, where do I get this peace that gives me my solid ground? Obviously, if I get up in the morning and I'm at peace with God, I'm at peace with you, and I'm at peace with the world, I've got a strong footing. I can stand. If I don't have peace relationally in any of those relationships, I'm a pushover. How do I get that kind of peace? Look at you might write this down. The third thing you need is serenity. Serenity. Serenity is living and speaking the gospel of peace. If I'm going to get dressed for battle, I need integrity, living and doing the truth. I'm going to need purity, and that is having my motives clear. And I'm going to need serenity, living in peace and speaking peace to other people. I live it and I speak it. Now, where do I get that kind of peace? How do I get it? The Bible says this in Psalms. It says in Psalm 119, great peace have they who love your law. And what is the law of God? It's the Bible. Great peace to those who love this book, and nothing can make them stumble. I love other translations that it says, great peace have they who love your law, and nothing can offend them. In other words, the more I love this book,